Mrs. Murphy will normally read a story in the morning, normally, up at the rug when we do read aloud. And I will let you take a test on this story if you were listening to the story. Now, my friends that are gone, like Aria and Briley and Libby, do you think that they should try to take a test on the story? No. So if you're ever gone, like maybe you're sick one day, or you're working with Mrs. Ong or Miss Shaper or Mrs. Nyroar, and you don't hear the whole story, then I don't want you to take a test on it, because you're not going to do very good on the story, on the test, because you don't know what the story is about. Did Mrs. Jensen let you take tests on the story she read last year?
Yeah.
Sometimes? Okay, sometimes. Well, Mrs. Murphy will let you take a test on the stories that I read to you. And I will always put the book titles up here with the quiz number. Ingrid, did she do that last year? No? Okay. So this is something that's different.
We normally look at our book and then we type it in.
Okay, but the quizzes that she read, or the books that she read, did she ever put it up on the board for you?
No. We just tapped it in.
Okay. So this is something different. So when Mrs. Murphy reads a story to you, you will be able to take an AR quiz on it if you were in the classroom and you were listening to it. Now, since we're hybrid and we have to be spread out, I can't read this to you because you guys will never see the pictures, and you can hear me, but you wouldn't be able to see it. So we're going to listen to it on the Clever Touch today, and I want you to listen to it very carefully, because today you are going to take your first quiz on the biggest apple ever. Okay? Corla, did you have a question?
What if you forget how the story goes?
Okay. Now, if you are listening to it, you got to listen for all the details. If you forget and it comes to the questions, you're just going to have to take a good guess, okay? Because sometimes we can't remember everything, and sometimes you just have to take a good guess and eliminate the ones that you know it's not right, okay? So Mrs. Murphy only reads the story once, and then you can take it, the quiz, okay? Allie, question?
I usually, I forget and then I remember when I get to it.
Then you get to it. Okay, good. All right, Addie.
What's this?
Okay, we're not talking about that yet. Okay, any questions about this? Brooklyn?
Does it tell you? Does it tell you that?
It does not time you. No.
Well, like if you get it wrong, does it show you the right answer?
At the very end, I believe. Okay? All right, so we're going to listen to this read aloud. Make sure you're listening to it, because we're going to be having to answer AR questions on it so that you can earn points towards your goal. Okay?
The Biggest Apple Ever. Written by Stephen Kroll. Illustrated by Jenny Bassett. Once there were two mice who fell in love with the same apple pie. But you had to be there to see how it happened. On opening day at Mouseville School, the principal, Mr. Mouser, made an announcement. We will be learning about apples this fall, and to get things started, have a contest. Whoever brings in the biggest apple to his teacher will win a special prize. The judging will take place on Friday. Good luck, everyone. I have an apple tree in my backyard, said Penelope. I bet it has really big apples. There's an apple tree across from my house, said James. I'm going to climb it as soon as I get home. I don't have any apple trees, said Clayton, the house mouse. But I'm going to find Miss Mousley the biggest apple ever. No, you're not, said his friend Desmond, the field mouse. I am. Oh, yeah, said Clayton. Yeah, said Desmond.
Yeah, I saw that thing like said
If
ad.
there's a better price, Honey will help find.
Sorry, I didn't catch that
All
time.
the way home on the school bus, Clayton and Desmond talked about the contest.
Can't cancel it.
Maybe I could grow an apple tree with really big apples, said Clayton. It takes too long, said Desmond. I heard Miss Mousley say 6 years. I'll think of something, said Clayton. So will I, said Desmond. When Clayton got off the bus, he sneaked back into town to see what Penelope and James were up to. Penelope had come down from her apple tree. She was carrying 2 tiny apples. James was still up in the tree across the street. He was picking very small apples. Clayton knew he'd seen bigger ones at the market. When Desmond came by a little later, he realized the same thing. The next day at school, Penelope and James brought in their tiny apples. No one else had brought in anything. Mrs. Mousley cleared her throat. Class, we have a lot of work to start this year. But because we're learning about apples and having an apple contest, we will go to Barnaby's orchard this afternoon. Everyone got very excited. I'm going to find the winning apple, said Clayton. I'm going to find the winning apple, said Desmond. At the orchard, Miss Mousley pointed out the different kinds of apples. Then everyone disappeared into the trees, looking for a winner. Clayton walked down one row, craning his neck. Desmond walked down another row, craning his neck. Then Clayton saw what he thought was a really big apple. It was a little too high to reach, but he stretched for it. At the moment, Desmond saw the very same apple on the very same branch. He stretched for it too. They bumped heads and fell down. I think we should bring this apple in together, said Clayton. No one said we couldn't, said Desmond. But when they got back to the bus, James had an apple that was even bigger. The apple was so big, he could hardly carry it. Clayton and Desmond looked at each other. What would they do now? That night at dinner, Clayton explained the problem to his dad. Said Dad. Apples don't come in too many sizes. Do you think you'll find a bigger one? I don't know, said Clayton. Then maybe James will win the prize this time. It's okay if he does. Over at Desmond's house, Uncle Vernon said the exact same thing. But Clayton and Desmond were still determined. The next afternoon, they met at Barnaby's orchard. They picked 2 huge baskets of apples, but nothing they found was bigger than the apple James had picked. You know, Clayton said, I think Dad was right. This time, James gets to win. But we've got all these apples. Why don't we bake a big apple pie? Desmond laughed. Great! Let's bake the biggest apple pie ever. And we'll make it for our class. Clayton nodded. And I think I know where we'll find a pie pan that's big enough. The following afternoon, Desmond arrived at Clayton's house with Uncle Vernon. Everything's packed up and ready, Clayton said. It's all in Dad's truck. But where are we going? Desmond asked. You'll find out in a minute, said Clayton. Dad drove with Clayton and Desmond beside him in the front seat. Uncle Vernon stayed in the back with the apples and other ingredients for the giant pie. As they came around the corner, Desmond gasped. Tony's pizza! Of course, said Clayton. What could be better than a giant pizza pan? Mr. Tony greeted them at the door. Welcome, welcome! We are ready to begin. And so they got to work making the dough for the crust, kneading it, rolling out half of it into a big circle, and spreading it over the deep dish pan. Then everyone peeled and sliced the apples, mixed the ingredients, the sugar and spices, and spread the rest of the dough on top. Wow, said Clayton and Desmond when they were finished. Wow, wow, wow. An hour, said Mr. Tony. Give me an hour. The giant pan just fit into his huge oven. The next day was Friday. Who would have the largest apple? James, of course. And Mr. Mouser handed him the prize, a cheddar cheese apple. Mrs. Mousley looked surprised. Clayton? Desmond? Nothing from you? The two of them grinned. At that same moment, the classroom door flew open. In came Clayton's dad, Uncle Vernon, and Mr. Tony, struggling to carry the giant pie by themselves. How wonderful, said Mrs. Mousley. That's the biggest apple pie ever. We made it for the whole class, said Clayton. All of us together, said Desmond. They shared a high five, and everyone in the class had a very big slice. Thanks for listening. And
Okay. So after we listen to a read aloud, whether Mrs. Murphy reads it or if you do it on the Clever Touch, you will get a chance to take an AR quiz on it to earn some points. So Ellie is going to be our example of how to take an AR quiz. Now I don't want you guys to do it yet because I want to do a practice one because Eli has never done this before and a few other of my remote learners have not done this either before. Question Wyatt really quickly. Okay, let's not worry about that right now, okay? All right, so Ellie, would you come up here? And you guys, when it's time, not yet, you will log in to Renaissance Learning like you do for Freckle. And you will click, I'm a student. Ellie, would you come up here, please? And Ellie, we're going to do it on Mrs. Murphy's Clever Touch. So would you just sit at John's desk for a moment? And Ellie, would you tell Mrs. Murphy what is your username?
ES564564.
Okay, so ES for Ellie Stewart, 564, and then, which is her lunch number, and then our password is 564. So, we'll hit login. You will now go to AR reading, or accelerated reading. Okay, look up here, guys. I don't want you looking at your iPads. You will click on that one, and it will pull up this accelerated reader page. Here is where you put in your quiz number if you know it. If you don't know it, you're going to have to type up a title. But if you can find a quiz number in your book, that is the fastest and easiest way to do it, okay? Over here is your progress. So you can see what your goal is and how many points you have to get and how many points you have. So, over the weekend, I put your goals in for you. Ellie's goal is up here. So Eli, do you see this? Ellie's goal is how many points?
4.
4. And we want to try to get our 4 points by the Friday before Halloween. So like our Halloween party day. And 4 points is like 8 books because it takes about 2 books to get a point. That's if you get perfects on all your scores. So it might be a few more than 8 books, but it's going to be about 8 books. Now this will be one of her books, so now how many will she have left? 7, right? So if she does really well on this test, now she'll only have 7, and it will grow like it did last year. Do you guys remember that your flowers from last year? Good. So it will grow. Okay. Now we're gonna go back, and Ellie is gonna tell Mrs. Murphy the quiz number, or it's up on the board too. So Ellie, what's the quiz number?
145175.
Thank you. I lost track there. Perfect. Okay, so she is going to log in. Now on here, you will click take the test. I want to tell you something, second graders. Some of your tests will read it to you, like it did last year in first grade. But some of the quizzes, it will not read it to you because you are big second graders now, and they think that you are really good readers. And so some of the quizzes, you will have to read them on your own. And so if you have to read them on your own, you just have to do your very best, or ask for help if you need help if you get stuck on a word, okay? So, Ellie, would you come for us to take the quiz? Come up here, Ellie. Leave it right there, yeah. Come up here. So Ellie's going to take this quiz and you guys can help her. And this is different from last year. You guys notice that?
Mm-hmm.
How you had to press start the quiz? Now, this is important. This first one, Eli, means I was read to. Did somebody read the story to you?
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Yes, so click that one, Ellie. If you read with someone, like let's say you're reading with Mrs. Shaw, some of you might read with her today. Or if you read with Mrs. Murphy, then you'll click this middle one. The W means with, you're reading it with somebody. This T one means like the teacher read it to you. Or today, the Clever Touch read it to you, right? This bottom one says I. That means I read it by myself. And today, when you guys take your quizzes, some of you will be reading your books on your own. Now, this is important because I need to know, did I read the story to you? Did you read it with somebody or did you read it by yourself? And your parents kind of want to know that too. Okay, so Ellie clicked I was read to and then start the quiz, Ellie. Now, most of your quizzes will have 5 questions. How many questions is here? 5. Now, is this reading it to us? No. So we're going to have to read this together. And when you go take your quiz on this today, guess what they do to the questions? They mix them around. So you'll have the same questions, but guess what they do?